Welcome. This is Ralph Bivens, the Ralph Bivens Project. Uh, Got a question for you today. Have you, this is a word for you, BOPIS. It's BOPIS, B like boy, BOPIS. You ever heard of that? You know what that means?
Yeah.
Well, it's stands for buy online, pick up in store. That's kind of really what we're in BOPIS and picking up in the store. And there's been a big revolution really in what's going on with shopping and retail centers, and some things have adapted, some stores have adapted, some centers have adapted, and some have faltered with what we've got going on here, and had been going on with the COVID and the lockdowns, the shutdowns. This is one of the sectors that was hit hard in a lot of places, but that some of that's over, and some of it's changed. But and we're really lucky to have us with us today is Jason Gaines, Senior Vice President of the Retail Division of NAI Partners with the Partners Organization. Jason's been doing shopping center activity and real estate oriented shopping centers and selling centers, leasing centers. I think he's done 1,000 leases or something. This is a phenomenal amount of leases during his career, and so he knows his way around the shopping center business. So, welcome, Jason. Thanks for coming. Yeah. The first one question I had: you're probably up to date on this. I know you're up to date on online shopping and shopping through Amazon and etc. What's your latest number on what the percentage of the market that people buy stuff online instead of going to a physical store?
I think it's a little more complex than that, because I think if you talk to, if you had your sort of retailer symposium of the Best Buys and the Bed Bath and Beyonds and the Walmarts of the world, and if they brought all their people in and you said, what percentage of your sales is in store? What percentage of your sales online? They would say, look, it's a more complex orchestrated operation. We are in need of storefront access to customer demands just as much as we are in need of, like, when Walmart made a major overhaul of their company and said, we're going to turn it into a tech company. We're going to make ourselves Amazon of the Midwest, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's no doubt in my mind that if you really were talking, over a glass of scotch or whatever with the guy with Bed Bath and Beyond, he'd say, look, it's not as simple as does Mrs. Smith buy online or does she buy in store? Sometimes she needs to be able to touch it, feel it, understand us and see us. Sometimes she needs convenience, and that can be the exact same customer in different cases. And I think that's the case for most people, is that most of us are guilty of sometimes wanting to buy local or buy from a certain brand or certain things like that, and then every once in a while you're just on a Sunday and you need something yesterday, and you're just like, to hell with it, I'm gonna go to Amazon because it can be here either in 3 hours or at most a day from now. And so sometimes the convenience appeals, sometimes the brick and mortar appeals, and the good news is that by and large we are not over flooding the market in the last, say, 15 years with retail category product, especially large, tougher to readapt big box space like we used to 10, 15, 20 years from ago. And so we're not painting ourselves into corners when these retailers are faltering, that there's not other uses to come and backfill these things that are not necessarily as traditional hard goods or soft goods retail, but nevertheless, we're not throwing out a bunch of spec boxes all over Houston and expecting Ross to continue to grow like a phenomenal company forever. We know that that's not totally sustainable because there's only so many of those category boxes.
Yeah, and then the construction, it's really not been as much construction in some places lately, in terms of the retail sector. But
correct. Well, retail is limited, right? We can only build on 25% of our land, so we have a limited coverage ratio problem. Quite frankly, it's harder to raise major dollars in this category. So that's why it's pretty fashionable to go out, buy a large tract and sell off the anchor piece to your anchor instead of dicking with all of their, corporate nonsense and all of their REA restrictions and stuff like that. It's like, here's your 20 acres, knock yourself out. And then I'll go, and what they end up really building in reality is maybe 20 to 30,000 square feet of total speculative space and a few pads out front. And what I'm saying is that they haven't flooded their investors with 150 to 200,000 feet of spec space and expect it all to work out just because they're magic men, right? They've said, hey, let's mitigate risk and let's in reality wholesale this thing from a giant land tract down into more manageable pieces. It's kind of like how you deal in drugs, right? You buy a whole bunch of drugs, you sell smaller pieces, you make profit. They're doing it where they're exiting some of these pieces to sale from key players that are just woefully impossible to deal with. And then they go forward and they say, I'm going to go and be in the development category, building small strip retailers where I can do this franchise stuff and these medical professional guys. And before you know it, I'm 100% out of this thing and we're all rich.
Yeah, well, they've adapted. I do think that there's a lot of potential for more retail to be built because we're having this geographic spread of housing going farther and farther away from. If you're only going to have to commute to town 3 days a week, then you can say, well, I'll go ahead and live way the heck out there and off the freeway somewhere. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of land being sold for new residential. And
yep.
Of course, the old adage, retail follows rooftops. Is, how many times have we heard that? So,
sure.
But anyway, but I think you're right. I think you hit on something with some of this introduction that happened during COVID with people, saying, well, I don't want to go into the store. I'm going to order my groceries online.
Mm-hmm.
But people got introduced to that, and I think it's it's stuck. Some of that was sticky, and people are still doing it when it's convenient for them. They might say, they adapt that way, and so we kind of broke the ice there and maybe accelerated the trend coming through and everything.
Well, and let me give you a real-time example of something going on right now that's to that point. Okay, so there's a company out of the Midwest, I think they're out of Indiana, called Gordon's Grocery Store, and people know them. They've seen their trucks around town. They're food distribution, wholesaling for restaurant supply and stuff like that. So you've seen Gordon trucks. Well, now Gordon's is saying, let's take ourselves one step closer to a grocery operation and set up these distribution point grocery style stores in Houston, or I don't know about other markets, but they're coming here. So I have, so we have one of them signed opening later this year at Westheimer Dairy Ashford, one that's in a pending lease at 529 in Barker Cypress, and another one that has already been signed and will be opening, not on a property I'm involved with, but on 1960 and Veterans Memorial. Those I know of. And what I'm getting at, though, is they are the personification of what you're talking about, because they're running what is arguably a grocery store, arguably a last mile distribution point for people to get their groceries. And they're sort of graying the lines between what those two things are. Whereas, when I was a little kid, you went to Randall's and you sat in the bottom of the shopping cart. Your mom pushed you around. It's pretty badass. You got to see all your friends, like low man to the ground, and low man to the ground, right? It was an experience. I got my cookie in the bakery. It's all very pleasant in my mind, no doubt about it. But nowadays, it's, like my son goes to about 4 different grocery stores between Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Kroger, and Rice Epicurean for any number of different reasons. And so people's image and needs are very unique, very different, it's very complex. And so Gordon's is exactly that. But here's the problem, right? Gordon's comes in here right now. I'm trying to hype all my properties as grocery anchored now. Hey, we're bringing in this grocery store. You should jump on board. You should pay my rent. You should pay my premium rent. And the retailers are saying, I don't know. This is not an HEB. This is not a Kroger. This is not a Target. This is not a Walmart. And if it's not those things, I'm not certain that I'm willing to pay your overpriced rent on that deal.
It's Gordon's, Gordons. Gordon's.
I think it's just Gordon. I think they're Gordon. They're a giant private corporation, but like I said, they're usually in the food distribution and support business.
But are these going to be stores, physical stores where you can walk down the aisle, or is this?
Now you sound like a tenant that I'm talking to. They say, "What the hell is this thing? Is it a grocery store, or is it a warehouse, or is it a delivery center?" And of course I'm a broker, so I lie my ass off and I say it's absolutely a grocery store.
Okay, so Gordon,
No,
Gordon,
but sincerely, that's the problem. Is what percentage of their sales is going to go out the door? What percentage of their stores in the store, and how much does that affect my business as the dry cleaner, as the nail salon, as the grab and go Chinese restaurant? And I think these are valid questions. And again, I absolutely try and tell tenants to shut up and sign a lease.
Hey,
Quit being
okay.
so smart.
But they're in retail centers, and they will have people that walk into their store and buy stuff off the shelf. But they also do a lot of delivery. Is that accurate?
The answer to that is yes, and the worst part is I don't know how it's going to look in terms of percentage proportionally, and that's the problem, is the unknown of them, because they're not even open in town yet.
What's their requirement for a footprint?
25,000 feet.
25,000. That's like an Aldi or something like that. About like,
Well, that's what we've been trying to equate to ourselves, is that they should have something of a warehouse grocery style store that would be on the ground right now, would be a Joe V's or a Phoenicia on the west side or something like that, that has a little more of a warehousey feel. But I mean, we just don't know, because we've never opened one, and we're going to open two of them in properties I'm involved with, and another up on the north side.
well, that's great, man. That's congratulations. I never thought I thought HEB had it locked down, and Kroger's was.
Nope. Wait till the Giants out of Seattle come down here and put down 30,000-foot fulfillment center stores.
Who?
I don't know.
You're talking about.
There's a broker that I talked to who has a not to be named client from a not to be described part of Northwest United States that he doesn't want to talk about it. He just knows they need 30,000 feet for something of a whatever you want to call it store. And I'm like, sounds good, bud.
Yeah, well, I thought that Amazon's gets closed. Some of their brick and mortar. They close their bookstores and their 4-star. You've been in those stores, Jason. I think you told me about this. You and your dad went to a place that had an Amazon store that was brick and mortar.
Yeah, we went to the Amazon HQ, and they have which is worth its weight in gold, by the way. It's pretty cool. But they have the Amazon Go store there. Now it's a small scale version. I want to say it's maybe 3,000 or 4,000 feet inside. And you essentially walk with your cell phone in hand with the Amazon app. In fact, I don't even think you have to open it, by the way. And it more or less assigns whatever you're putting into your hand and then putting into your basket into your Amazon account. And there's no cashiers. It's almost like if you're walking through like a turnstile style. So it has like a little thing that lets you go through once you've scanned all your groceries through, and then it's magically accurate, including, by the way, because I tried this, was I put things back too. I said, okay, if I don't want this kind bar or whatever, I put that back, and it, sure enough, I was looking on my phone and it was deducting it from my tab. So what's funny is this conversation right now sounds absolutely bizarre, but in about 20 years, it will sound hilarious, because people will be like, look at these idiots talking about walking out of stores without cashiers. And it'll seem, I mean, I remember when I was a little kid thinking to myself, it seemed silly that we had to take all the groceries out of the basket, put them onto a conveyor, then put them back into the basket to take them home. And this is basically solving that common sense issue, right? Of transaction style. And of course, it saves them gazillions of dollars in labor. And then there's all the political outcomes of basically you're displacing workers and da. But nevertheless, this is certainly coming.
Bank lobby. I can walk in a bank lobby and they got automatic tellers where there used to be some. Like, hey, what about those people's jobs?
Yes.
That's same thing at Kroger, where they've got a lot of the self checkout. It's somebody's job that just disappeared. So I guess that's the way life goes, and that's the way capitalism is. And, what other new brands have you seen circling the market or about to come in, or you?
It's as much categories as anything. The extreme discount, where you have the liquidation centers. There's the leading category killer on that is a group called Ollie's Outlet, which is a Midwestern publicly traded retailer. For people that haven't seen one before, I would say it's akin to an evolution of a Big Lot store. It's closeout, liquidation, overstock merchandise, and then there's a few of the groups like them that are in either the liquidation category or the extreme discount category. We're wrapping up a lease right now with a group called Shoppers World out of New York, private
Shoppers.
company. Shoppers World, not a very creative name, but nevertheless, taking down 35,000 square feet in an old Target box at 1960 and Jones Road that's been vacant since I've more or less been in this industry. So probably about 15, no, God Lord, probably long. It's probably about 15 years vacant. I've been in this business 18 years. So it's a long time. Let's just say needed cash flow, needed occupancy. And, these groups are coming in. They don't pay a lot of rent. I always say, look, when you go to these kind of groups, you went to the dance, you talked to all the pretty girls, you said, you want to dance with me? They all told you no, you're short, fat, and ugly. And then you said, fine. And here's the ugly girl down at the end of the way. And you can't start talking to her like she's pretty. She's like, look, I pay $5 a foot or whatever, right? So, so it is what it is once you get to the end of the bench here. But nevertheless, again, we're talking about right now we're filling space across town. I'm probably filling 75,000 square feet of what I call chronic historic vacancy, which is space that's been vacant for at least 10 years, that any reasonable economist would just go, clearly this, either the landlord's not serious or the market completely rejected this space. Like I'm doing a 10,000 square foot medical deal in Pasadena in a space that's been vacant since I was in high school. It's really rare times, and it's being funneled by just so much competitive capital and population growth all coming on Houston. And it's pretty simple math. You just have the size of Waco comes and moves here every single year. And every single year we have new sources of even more exotic and foreign capital coming in here with even more gusto than the year before. And so sure enough, there's companies that want to get all over that, coming from all kinds of places nationwide and otherwise.
You touched on something, the old retail properties, and we have a bunch of them, and some of them are dead regional malls and people, everybody wonders what can we do with. You gave us several of you finally leased up after a decade of vacancy, but what about that may not work everywhere? What about the adaptive reuse, as they like to call it, the secondary usage? What would you think? How does this work out?
Well, so I'm in the shopping center business, and I mean this sounds silly, but like the mall business is almost its own unique industry. The malls are an absolute dumpster fire to operate. I mean, you've got no less than usually 6, 7, 8, even 10 different legal tracks with different owners. You've got different capital motivations, because suddenly you're talking with Sears out of Chicago, or Dillard's or something like that in Cincinnati, and their motivations as an operator are totally different than yours as a redeveloper, because they're just scared that the old Macy's box is going to turn into the United Churches of the Benetton or whatever. And they don't want to see that, because they want to see their stores thrive despite the mall's failure. I do not envy people who go after malls. I think it's rarely worth its weight, to be honest with you, because you have to deal with all of these strange egos that are involved in the room, and you have to line them all. And then you're basically a politician, because you're trying to shake dollars out of the municipalities. It's a mess. I have this conversation with my dad about the College Station all the time. I'm like, don't touch it, just set it on fire, and eventually somebody will come and fix it.
Yeah, I know that. Oh, yeah, that the Urban Land Institute, they have some ranked outlooks on what's going to happen for the different kinds of retail centers.
Yeah,
their bottom
correct.
Their bottom thing, their word is regional malls, and there are some golden, Baybrook does good, the Galleria does good. I think the Woodlands did, but then there are a lot of them that time's passing by.
Well, I'll tell you what. But to the point where I'm in the true shopping center, not mall business. I mean, I'm a broker, so I'm kind of guilty of being this way. But I tell buyers that just about anything in the urban population zone of Houston right now is possible. I mean, I just gave you 2 examples of C- properties that have had, throwaway vacancy, where underwriting is just putting a 0 factor on this, and we're creating very real revenue out of these spaces that's commensurate to the capital costs. And let me tell you what, you start seeing action at the C level, knowing that there's always going to be action at the A level. We have any reason to think that any property in town can create more cash flow streams, moving forward than even today, where the market is what, about 7 to 8% vacant. So I mean, the COVID bounce back has been incredible, let alone what I'm telling you, which is we're not going to build that much retail. We're going to have a whole bunch of people move here. We're going to have a whole bunch of investors that keep moving this way. Yeah, if interest rates move up, they may adjust cap rates, but nevertheless, you can sell your cash flow streams. And if your cash flow streams are up 20% on where they were when you bought into this thing a couple of years ago, you're still making a whole lot more money than your goddamn cap rate issues. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cuss.
Yeah.
My bad. Sorry, y'all.
You do, but I think about some of these. We've seen a lot of brands go, Bed Bath and Beyond. They've closed a bunch of stores. A lot of the fitness, the 24-hour fitness, and a lot of those brands in COVID, especially when we were really, really sensitive at the beginning. We're talking about so many fitness stores, movies, all those kind of boxes. Their business went away. I don't know if they'll, how much they'll come back. I think some movies have come back, and some fitness centers in the new brands. But
well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you a real-time example. Fair enough. So there's a shopping center up by Willowbrook Mall, has a 92,000 square foot 24 theater AMC theater, right? AMC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So client of mine, they're the institution that's run that thing into the ground for the last 7 years, had that thing on the market right before COVID. A client of mine put it under contract. COVID hits. He, of course, has to drop the contract. Just yesterday, I met with the guy out of Miami that came in, swooped up the deal, and bought it for pennies on the dollar. He's over there spending major capital dollars and importing all of his Miami restaurant operators in there. He's going to create hundreds of thousands of dollars of new cash flow. So, of course, I said, okay, you're one of the smartest guys I've ever run into. What are you going to do with the theater box when the whole movie industry goes to shit and there's no more theaters? And he said, well, number one, we have a real close relationship with AMC. They're understanding that the scale of their business is going to have to scale down, and that you can't run 24 theaters or movie theaters. He said, but look, because 92,000 square foot box, just in your mind, take 46,000 square feet off. Well, we take 46,000 square feet off. We're going to turn that out and redevelop it into an entertainment piece that's going to complement the movie theater. Point of what I'm trying to tell you is life goes on, and I am not convinced that there are not many what I call space filler alternative retail backfill operators out there in America right now that are brewing up investor dollars, doing quite well and growing their numbers again. I could give you more examples of groups coming to town right now, but there's a lot of them. They're not getting a lot of attention because, unfortunately, they're not chronicle sexy stories. But Shoppers World taking down a couple of 35,000 square foot boxes, and these Gordon guys coming in taking a few 25,000 foot boxes. You start taking some of that away from the numerator on the vacancy around here, we're going to get to about 5% vacancy before you know it.
And not much new space happening. So I think vacancy is going up, and we see vacancy going up enough, and that translates to rents. And
correct. Now the office building guys are in the toilet. I mean, they're I don't know, you got me with them, but I mean, my business is quite frothy and, quite frankly, almost a little undersupplied.
Wow. Oh yeah, I've been meaning to ask. Weingarten Realty has been in business for, I don't know, decades and decades. Local company, but they had centers across the 150 centers or something. They were acquired last year for $4 billion by Kimco, Kimco. Tell me about their property. The property, how's this all shaking out, Jason? What about you have some observations about the Weingarten properties? What's happening?
I mean, money's money, right? I mean, at some point, everybody's got to ring the bell. So for Weingarten, it was I don't know if a no-brainer, but it was a solid decision to go ahead and take their giant company and serve themselves up to probably the leading REIT in the non-mall space is Kimco. And for the Kimco people, I mean, they're jumping into a portfolio that's so heavily weighted in Texas and a little bit in California and some in Mexico. I think that's worth its weight in gold. I mean, it's not like it's a Rust Belt REIT or something like that. I mean, Weingarten is the king of Houston and certainly has a big run of properties all throughout the Southwest, and that's where the growth zone is. And so for Kimco, they're like absolutely happy to take y'all out. And for Weingarten, they're like, I don't know, I'm going to build a lake house. Life goes on.
Yeah, well,
but so I think it's a win-win. And I think, I mean, like, if you want my actual opinion, I think if you've seen one REIT, you've seen them all. They're more or less the same operators with outrageous processes and whatnot. I mean, some of my clients buy REIT product specifically to actually lease the stuff rather than arguing about not leasing it. I mean, it's kind of what they do, but it's a corporate America strategy, and it's, quite frankly, they're all about the same flavor of vanilla at this point.
Thinking of geographic, talking about the Houston area, are there some pockets that I know you did a deal over in Pasadena recently, but are there some pockets that are getting ready to be reborn or blossom for the first time, or with upscale potential we haven't thought about? What would you say? How would you rank these various markets around town?
Well, I think that the demand is going to be a fairly universal thing. I mean, there's only a couple of extreme examples of areas where, I mean, there's probably just too much urban poverty to really make much go for retail development unless it comes into a opportunity zone and it has local sponsorship dollars. I mean, there's ways to do it civically, but I mean, you know, like a client of mine looked at a deal at Mesa and Tidwell and said, how can we not buy the Fiesta Center at Main and Main of the neighborhood for subhuman pricing? And I was like, because there's no spending power here. I mean, there's some extreme examples like that, but otherwise, I don't mean to be so rosy, but if I own property anywhere in the greater populated Houston area zone, I don't believe for a second that I cannot defend my income streams, and most importantly, probably not with some reasonable capital outlay, improve my position and improve those cash flows over the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, there's zero doubt in my mind that we're going to be on a high demand basis for energy, high demand basis for medical services. The port is not going to be any less busy for the next 3 or 4 years. There's just not any one indicator out there, even with a national setback. I'm talking like 2010 Houston here, where I'm going to national conventions and I'm seeing people drowning in tears, and I'm over here doing deals because in 2010 we were still a functional city while the rest of America was sluggish. I could still see that because of our energy and port here. It's just built into the fabric. And I would tell anybody right now that they should be looking at cash flows as a moving forward net positive, unless there's special circumstances.
With oil at over $100 a barrel, how can things go wrong in Houston? You know.
Correct, but even if oil sets itself back to $50 a barrel or something like that, that doesn't sound so pleasant. What I'm trying to suggest is that it seems to me that the demand factor on energy is so out of control. Whether it's oil, whether it's alternative energy, whether it's anything, there's still going to be a lot of job need and end user need here in Houston to be able to service what the country needs for energy needs.
Yeah,
that's all.
Anything out of? I think did you go to the ICSC event, the shopping center event recently?
I did. I'm still a little hungover.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fun conference.
It is.
What's the big? Can you describe the mood of the topic, or what did you learn there at ICSC?
Mood was absolutely industrious. Everybody had on their freshly tailored blue coats going on, and little shine in their eyes. They got their eyebrows all done up. It was pretty positive. I will tell you this much. Maybe because of COVID, maybe because of people being genuinely busy, or who knows. It was probably a third. It was probably 2/3 of what it usually would be pre-COVID in Dallas for this event. But the people that were there were out of control, energetic about deals. My AirPods went dead twice because I was basically on the phone with buyers and so forth. I mean, it was boiler room type stuff. It felt good, man. It was really good to be back in there. And I can tell you this much, is that anyone I talked to that was looking at any urban parts of Texas, or in this case, even up into Oklahoma, was very bullish that their product was going to go on the ground smoothly, get filled up, be able to find end user buyers. They have lots of exit partners. They have financing options. I didn't hear anybody saying anything disparaging about their prospects business wise and whatnot. But I did hear, of course, a lot of bitching and moaning about construction prices, raw materials prices. One guy was saying sand is the new oil and stuff like that because of concrete. And so, look, as a broker, I just shrug my shoulders and make that the developer's problem. If I'm a developer, obviously this stuff's weighing heavily on my mind. And certainly there's the issues of where rents have just gone soaring because of all these things in the last 6 months. I mean, tenants are seeing A-class ground up rents are probably up 10% from where they were 6 months ago to account for materials.
The inflation is a scary thing on the horizon, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get it under control, but it's not going to be a quick fix.
No, and there's a lot of disingenuous people that have a very simplistic attitude about why it's here, what it means, and how it works in their lives. So unfortunately, you're also talking to people who are more or less not listening to you about it. But you know what? I understand the principles of it, so I'll work around it.
Yeah. Jason Gaines, NAI, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and background with us today about the shopping center business, and appreciate it so much. We'll have to check back with you at the end of the year, see what's going on.
Yeah, happy to do it, man. Pleasure.
All right, we'll see you, Jason.
All right, y'all be good.